get it in. Does to Smith. Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got it! Alperensengun Smith, a good look at a three, and he misses it short.
We are here to fuel your Rockets news. This is the Rockets Fuel Podcast. And of course, I'm your co-host, Lachard Binkley. You always find me on Twitter at Binkley Hoops. And you can find my written work over at SB Nation. And before we get too far into the Rockets' unfortunate loss last night, let my co-host give a chance to introduce himself.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Vator. You can find me on Instagram and also Twitter, XApp, whatever you're calling it now, at Vator Sports. You can get your latest Rockets and Texans news. Not too much Astros right now since we unfortunately didn't make it to the World Series. But I'm actively rooting against the Texas Rangers right now. So sorry if you're a Texas Rangers fan.
Yeah, and I think most of Houston is rooting against the Texas Rangers, except for the people that are, long as it's a Texas team and they're rooting for them, which to me makes no sense at all. But I let that go for another time. But as you saw in the opening there, we saw Jabari Smith miss that wide open three that would have gave the Rockets at least the 3-point lead with only a couple of seconds left. But unfortunately, it bounced off the rim and the Rockets ended up losing in overtime. It was definitely a tough loss. Much better effort, but at the end of the day, these are professionals, and moral victories really don't go that far when it comes to the NBA. So the Rockets are now 0-2. Unfortunately, kind of what we saw last year. They would kind of crumble down the stretch, not make the big plays, make too many mistakes, and then they will end up losing the game. And that's what we saw last night in their loss to the Spurs. And even before that three-pointer that Jabari Smith missed, he missed two free throws at around the 38-second mark that would have put him up 4. That would have definitely changed the entire game. But, of course, the game doesn't always come down to one or two plays. So we're going to kind of start there and talk about what we saw in last night's game and why the Rockets lost that game, a game that they led for most of the second half, a game where they seemed like they were in control. Jalen Green was having a really good game through three quarters. Fred VanVleet was good the entire game. So was Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks has been the Rockets' most consistent shooter the first two games. I don't think anybody saw that coming into these regular season. But, Vader, let's start there. What did you see from the Rockets in this last game, and why did they ultimately end up losing in overtime?
So I'll start with the positives. I kind of don't want to. Like it's hard, man. We suffered for 3 years watching probably some of the worst basketball that some of us have ever seen.
Yes.
Our Houston Rockets play. So it's been difficult. One thing for me though, like I don't want to say I've been okay with the losses, but I understood what the end goal was. I knew that there was a plan. Unfortunately, the plan was to tank. And when you know that going in, the losses for me at least did not sting as much because I expected them. And then there was always that carrot that was dangled in front of us, the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And hopefully that light does not turn out to be a train. We won't know yet, but like I was okay with having the worst record in the league, for those years in a row because, I knew we were going to get like top draft picks out of it and hopefully get cornerstone pieces for our franchise that could lead us back to the Western Conference Finals and then hopefully to the NBA Finals and hopefully also lift that trophy up. So like now the losses actually hurt me. Like that loss last night was probably the first time in a while where I actually felt like genuine disappointment. Like I faked pretending to be mad. I faked pretending to be disappointed because I almost like didn't care if we won or lost because more losses meant a better chance of getting the number one pick in the draft. But now, man, like that, the Rockets did everything that they needed to do to win that game. I think Emi Udoka put us in a good position. Whatever game plan they had, I think it worked. But one thing that you can account for is missed free throws. We went 10 for 20, I believe, 50%.
Yes,
That's unacceptable for an NBA franchise. And then I think we shot 8 for 32 from the 3-point line. And it's going to be hard to hit games. Win games if we cannot shoot. And I knew that coming into the season, shooting was probably going to be one of our biggest deficiencies. And so far that has played out in the first 2 games. So hopefully I don't know. When you look at the roster construction, I don't know what the solution to the 3-point shooting is right now. other than we need for guys to step up. We need for Jabari to start knocking down his open threes. We need for Jalen to knock down his threes. Um, even though Fred VanVleet had a really good game yesterday, I think that's the one area he struggled
Yeah,
was
2 for 10.
yeah,
Yeah.
from the 3 point line. Dylan Brooks has been really solid, but I mean, outside of that, like we've had a huge hole. Like, and this is in the modern era. Like shooting, you have to be able to shoot to like actually really win. It's not the old days where you could just dump it down, to a big guy and then like just dominate in the paint and win that way. Because what we've learned is three is greater than two. But like I said, the positives that I wanted to start with is that I think, man, Fred VanVleet really looked good. Like I think this is why they brought him in. Him and Shingun operating together in a pick and roll. I was really impressed by what I saw from those two guys. Um, he like when it looked like things were like kind of getting away from the team, I feel like Fred VanVleet was there to kind of like steady the ship, and that's something that we probably really haven't had in the past. Was a guy who our quarterback, our guy who could go out there and be like, hey, the game is getting a little out, and getting a little away from us. Let me go and get us a bucket. Let me go and make this defensive play. Let me, whatever it takes to win. And I saw that from him. And Shingun had an amazing game up until the end. I think maybe he got a little fatigued.
Yeah.
He played a lot of minutes. I think he played probably the most minutes he's ever played in an NBA game. But
About
like
38 minutes or something like that.
I think it was like 38 or 40 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
And guarding Victor Wembanyama and then also like being probably like if not number one, at least 1A on offense. I think he had a hell of a game if I'm being honest. Some people like were not happy with the way the game ended and some of the stuff that happened in overtime. But I think if you look at it objectively and look at his entire body of work, he played really good defense. He's not our weakest link on defense anymore. I know people used to point to him as being like the weak link on defense. Right now, it's not him.
So who is the weakest link on defense now?
Uh, we our guys need to step up. I saw Jabari got to play better defense, man. Let's just be honest. He has to play better defense. I think Jalen got after it at times, but then there's still, those times where he falls asleep on defense and he gets back cut, or he doesn't get his screen, getting over screens and stuff like that. He has to be better at those things. I believe in Ime Adoka though. I think he's going to get these guys. Like if they have it in them, I feel like if Ime can't get it out of them, I don't know. Um, what do
So,
you think as far as
so I want to go a little bit deeper into a couple of players you mentioned. First, like Jabari. So we saw Jabari beginning of last year struggle for most of the first half, and a lot of people put that on. Well, Salas is not putting him in the best positions. He's making him a spot up shooter, which a lot of that was true. He wasn't put in the greatest spots to score. And then the second half of the season, we saw him get a lot more comfortable. He started taking more mid range. He started being more confident in his handles, getting to the basket, more shots in the post. And then it carried over to Summer League, where he was the guy getting most of the shots and was able to get himself going into the offense. But now that we're into more of a structured setting to where you have a clear pecking order of who's going to have the ball in Fred VanVleet, then you have Jalen Green, then you have Alperen Sengun. So now it seems like a lot of times Jabari is just kind of just floating out there, like sort of like he was beginning of last season, where you don't even know he's on the court half the time unless he's, I mean, not trying to be funny, unless he's missing a shot or getting beat on defense. So do you think that it's more of he's not getting enough shots so that he's not being able to get in the flow in the offense? Or is it just a matter of, well, maybe it's just the first couple of games. It's kind of hard to draw a conclusion on whether what's going on with Jabari. Because let's be honest, the first two games he has not been good. If Jabari has a halfway decent game yesterday, the Rockets probably win that game pretty easily. Because like you said, Alperin was pretty much worn out in overtime. You could kind of see that with his turnovers because he's having to guard Wemby on one end, but Wemby's not having to guard him on the other end. Wemby's guarding Jabari Smith, and Jabari Smith's not putting any pressure on Wembanyama on the offensive end. So Wembanyama can kind of just float around the court, not really much pay much attention to Jabari. So what are you seeing from Jabari, and what does Jabari need to do? Because let's be honest, if Jabari and Jalen don't take that next step this year, we're not going to see the huge improvement that a lot of Rockets fans want to see in the win total.
That's the thing that scares me the most, because these are two guys that I believe in, two guys that I've taken a lot of like criticism, on social media, because I do hype these guys up. I do, like, when they make a good play, I like to like highlight the play that they made. But like, they're running out of, the clock is ticking. Like, if we're being
Yeah.
honest, nobody cares about the highlight plays when you're not winning. And so I think we've reached a point now. We're in phase two. The general manager has said that himself, and so now the expectation is different. The expectation is for us to actually go out and not make highlight plays, but make winning plays. And we made enough winning plays, for I want to say 46 minutes.
Yeah.
For about 46 minutes, we made winning plays, and then the last 2 minutes of the game, like, and I know the refs played a role in that, but you can't always just pin stuff on the referees, right? Especially when you still have an opportunity to ice the game. The thing I didn't like the way Jabari closed the game. He missed two free throws. You don't have to make both of them. You have to make at least one of those free throws. Then it's a 4-point game,
Yes.
right? Then he went down on the other end, and he was not able to guard Victor Wembanyama at all. Victor, there was like barely any resistance. Wemby scored, and then he had an opportunity to win the game with a 3-pointer, which he also missed. So
Wide open 3-pointer.
wide open three. And so for me, he has a lot to prove, right? It's only 2 games into his sophomore season. We saw a lot of very encouraging things from him in the preseason, and even before that in the summer league. But he was playing a different role. He was more of a focal point, and like you said, now he's kind of having to play off of guys, and he has to be able to do that. He has to show that I don't need to I don't need them to run play after play after play for me in order for me to get in my rhythm. If I get a wide open shot, I can knock that down, because I think that's kind of what they drafted him to be. And so, like, I'm a little concerned, but I'm not ready to give up on him after 2 games. And I know you aren't either. I know that's not what
Yeah.
you're asking. It's
Yeah.
but it's concerning, because we saw a whole season last season where he got open shots, and I think he shot 30% on wide open shots, which is insane. Which is, I mean, that is a very low percentage, right? Especially for a guy who we drafted, who we thought was going to be like a knockdown shooter. And so when you're talking about like wide open shots, that means like you're unguarded, it's uncontested basically, and you're not making those. And I think that is a level of concern. Now, I do think he plays better when he's able to like get the ball in the mid post and operate there and kind of get into a rhythm. But it does concern me that they need to do all of those things in order for him to also maybe be able to hit threes. So I don't know, man. Like, I'm hoping that he like shakes back. I'm tomorrow. I think tomorrow is gonna be an interesting game. Like, Golden State has always been like that thorn in our side, and they're not the same Golden State that they've been. But like, after yesterday, I'm encouraged by a lot of stuff that I saw yesterday. But I want to see I want to see how Jabari responds to this game.
Yeah, because to kind of wrap it up on Jabari, we need Jabari to be more like Tari when it comes to affecting the game, not just with his scoring.
Hmm.
Because Tari can be in there and no plays at all can be ran for him. And he's going to somehow still
Yeah.
get you 15 points and 7 rebounds and 3 steals. Somehow he's still going to affect the game. Jabari can't be on the court and not affect the game in some way, even if he's not getting enough shots or he's not scoring. He has to get some weak side blocks. He has to get some steals, some rebounds. He has to like kind of have to change the game, because your scoring is going to come and go, but like your defensive intensity and your effort, that should like never go away. That should be there every single game. And so far in the first 2 games, he hasn't imposed his will at all on the game. He's barely even been noticeable on the court. So you definitely want to see that. And like you said, no, I'm not giving up on Jabari Smith, because it's at the end of the day, it could have been January. He had 2 bad games. We might not even think anything about it, but because it's the first 2 games of the season, it kind of stands out more.
and
But
then
at some
coming and then
point,
coming off of last season. But like you
yeah,
said, the intangible things, we got to see those like intangible things that, like, okay, he's out there, he's impacting the game. Because if we're really being honest, I'm off the top of my head, but I think he got 16 shots yesterday. That's a lot of shots.
he
So
had
it's not
plenty of
like he did.
shots.
It's not like he didn't. It's not like he wasn't involved. He was
Yeah.
involved. He was like 5 for 16, and I don't care about the shooting necessarily, and I mean this for Jalen Green as well, who I've repeatedly said in many different places that He's been my favorite player on the team, but my expectation for him in year 3 is different from what my expectation was in year 1 and 2. Like I'm expecting to see, okay, yeah, my shot's not falling this game. I need to get rebounds. I need to defend a little bit harder. I need to go after those loose balls. I need to like set my teammates up, get my guys in position to score, be a leader. Like these are things that Jalen Green needs to do. Um, and I think he had a decent game yesterday against the Spurs, but I also did not like. I don't know what happened in the second half as far as him getting shots up, but like the fact that he barely got any shots in the fourth quarter in the overtime is a concern for me.
So yeah, I want to ask you about that because that was actually the next thing I was going to bring up. First 3 quarters, 17 shots. Fourth quarter and overtime, 3 shots, and 2 of those shots came at the 17-second mark in overtime, where San Antonio was basically playing the NBA equivalent of prevent defense, where they were just trying not to foul him at that point. So basically, he had 1 shot in a quarter and a half, which unfortunately is the most important quarter and a half of the entire game. So, do you think that's hey, the Rockets need to find ways to run plays for him and get him in better position, or Jalen just need to be the alpha and say, hey, look, it's the fourth quarter, it's crunch time. Give me the ball. And when I get the ball, I'm going to be aggressive and at least try to get to the foul line. Not to say that they're going to make the free throws when they're shooting free throws, but at least put some pressure on the defense to get to the foul line. Because, like I said, he checked back in at the 7-minute mark in the fourth quarter, took 1 shot in the fourth quarter, and that was it. So do you think he just needs to just say, hey, I'm supposed to be the main guy on this team. I need to step up and just take the, because for whatever we want to say about James Harden, we know James Harden is going to get the ball and he's going to take his shots, whether they go in or not. So sometimes Jalen just needs to take that attitude like, hey, I know we're running this play, but if y'all want me to be the alpha on this team, I need to be able to have the ball in my hands.
So there's a slippery slope, right? As far as do you want to go out there breaking plays? Because nobody wants to be on the team with the guy who like we call a play and you just call your own number. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like, and see, here's the thing: like, we're not even having this conversation if we make those free throws. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the game plan, whatever the game plan was in the fourth quarter, for most of the quarter, it worked. And I think a lot of the game plan, they let Alperen Sengun and Fred VanVleet kind of run the offense, and it worked good enough for them to secure a win. And then maybe we're not even having this discussion, but my thing with Jalen is that I want Jalen to he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy who we run the offense through. But I think in order for this team, like you said earlier, in order for this team to actually be a team that is threatening for a play-in spot, right?
Yeah.
Jalen Green has to take another leap. He has to take another step, and that does not necessarily mean that he has to be like the focal point of the offense. As far as like we can run the offense through Shingun, that's perfectly fine. But Jalen Green needs to be a closer. He needs to be a guy who you are relying on to get buckets.
Exactly.
And I say you agree, but like, and if he's not that guy, I think we're in for a long season. We're in for a season where we're going to end up being very disappointed, and we're going to be like questioning, several guys placed on this team at the end of the season. So like, it's gotten to the point now where like we saw this in his rookie season where he kind of drift off to the corner because they weren't involving him in the offense. Last year he had the ball in his hands. That was not the issue at all. His issue last season was with efficiency because he probably had the ball too much. He had the ball like, he was running a lot of pick and rolls. He's running a lot of isolations. And we saw yesterday in the first half, Udoka was using him perfectly. Like it was perfect. He was getting the ball and like dribble handoffs. He was getting like screens and getting it off the catch. And he is so dangerous when he is utilized in that manner. And then we kind of went away from it, which I don't understand. I do want in those situations for him to feel empowered to be like, hey, I'm gonna go and get this bucket. I don't care what the play is, like you said. So there's a fine line, and I don't know what the answer is because you don't want a guy out there that's just being selfish and not playing team ball. I respect the fact that he is trying to be a good teammate and he is trying to fit within the confines of the offense. But I do know, and maybe we got to shake back from the Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan kind of comparisons or whatever. But I know Michael Jordan is going to get his shots up. I know Kobe Bryant is going to get his shots up.
Even Luka, like last night, Luka is a whatever you want to say about Luka. Luka's a closer. He came like I think Dallas was trailing for most of the game, and then the last couple minutes he had like 2 or 3 threes and put the game away. That's the thing because the Rockets going to be more competitive. Who's going to be their closer? Who's going to be the guy that's going to close out games and that hey you're going to give the ball to him and he's going to put the game away because the Rockets needed to put that game away last night because the way they were shooting free throws, the way they were shooting threes, you did not want that game to come down to the last whatever couple of points, and that's exactly what happened, and they ended up losing. So that's the question: who's going to be the Rockets closer? Because a guy that will remain nameless was their guy that they went to. Not that he always did what he was supposed to do and close out the game, but that's who they depended on. But is it going to be Van Vliet? Is it going to be Jalen Green? Because it's kind of hard for Sengun to be that closer because you see they can just double team him and get the ball out of his hands.
Right. And so like when and that's another thing while you were talking about that, I was thinking like there's only one Nikola Jokic. As much as I love Shingun, there's only one Nikola Jokic. It's hard
Yeah,
to close a game from a post scorer
it
in
is.
the modern NBA, right? You most teams that you look around the league that when you look at their closer is it's Luca, it's Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. It's you know what I mean? It was Harden for some time. It was Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. You know what
Damian
I mean? Like
Lillard,
yeah,
somebody like that.
yeah, and so like we're relying on Shingun a lot. Like we want him to do play better defense. He's done that.
Playmaker,
We
yeah.
want him to rebound better. He's done that. We want him to make plays. He's done that. But now we want him to close the game out too. Like and the guy who we brought in my opinion, and this was a debate that I was in earlier today with a lot of people, was like, can Jalen Green be an alpha? And I think the longer we have to ask that question, the more I start thinking that maybe he can't be. I want him to be. I think that he has all the talent in the world. I think he has the talent to be that closer. But the longer we have to like question, can he be that? The more I start to wonder, because to me, it's not even. And I had this discussion with you too, off camera, but it's not a. I can't put my finger on it, and I know he has all the ability to do it, but at some point in time, something up here has to like click with him where like when I get the ball, like nobody can stop me, and I'm gonna either make a play for myself, I'm gonna make a play for my teammates, and hopefully now that he has some coaching, like it's too and see people had these conversations last night too after the game. Oh, Jalen Green can't be an alpha anymore. He can't be a one on a championship level team. That's yet to be determined. Like let's give him a large portion of this season to see how he adapts to having a guy like Ime Udoka as his coach and being in a system for the. I mean, I don't want to say that he was not in a system at all, but like let's say he's in a system, right? He's in a system, and I think there's an adjustment process. There's a filling out process, but if he is not displaying those qualities by the end of the season, then yeah, I'm gonna be wondering if he's gonna be that guy that we thought he was when we drafted him.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're pretty much the same way. I'm not going to make any overarching narratives about the team after 2 games. I mean, I'm just not going to do it. Now, if they're playing like this in December and January, then you definitely start to worry because that's definitely enough time to kind of get used to your teammates, to at least have some type of functioning offense to, know that, okay, we need to cut down on these mistakes and for Ime to make the adjustments that he needs to make. Now, if we're in December and January and this team is, I don't know, 10, 15 games under 500 already, then you just then it's okay to start reacting and start talking about the entire season beyond just those games. Because right now it's really just a game in, game out basis because we don't know how good the teams are that they're playing. Maybe Orlando's a really good team this year. Maybe San Antonio's going to make the playoffs this year. So we can't just sit up and say, well, they lost to this San Antonio team that didn't even make the playoffs last year because that's last season. This is a totally different San Antonio team this year, as we know with all the hype around Victor Wembanyama, and maybe Orlando taking that next step this season. So you really don't know who's good and who's bad in the first week of the NBA season. So I'm not going to go say, hey, Jalen Green is just sucks. He's just not ever going to be that guy. You can't really make those statements after 2 games. So
And you know what's crazy? He had a good game, right?
yeah, he had a
He
good
had a
game.
good
Yeah,
game. He just didn't close the game the way that we want to see him close it
yeah,
because of what we know he can do.
yeah.
I was very impressed with his shot making. I was impressed. Like I was very impressed the way he bounced back from game 1 to game 2. Like in that first half, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's just like the way the game ended. Like I said, we're not even having this conversation if we make a couple free throws or we make one more 3-pointer or whatever. But yeah, man, like I haven't given up. I haven't given up on it. The thing is, though, like we lost for 3 years to go into the
Yes.
lottery in order
You
to
have to factor that in.
get these guys right. And so, yeah, we need to hit on Jalen Green. Like I was having this discussion with people earlier, but maybe we don't need to hit on all of them. But I'm gonna use this analogy again. You know, OKC out of consecutive drafts were able to get Kevin Durant, Jeff Green, uh, Russell Westbrook, James Harden,
Serge
Serge
Ibaka.
Ibaka. Like that's probably an anomaly, right? You're not going to hit on all of those picks every single time. Reggie Jackson, they got out of a draft, right? That's not usually like what happens. Usually there's some hits and misses. But when you start missing and missing and missing, you end up being what the Sacramento Kings were for all those years. You're just drafting high picks, you're drafting the wrong guys, or you're drafting guys and you're not fully developing them the way that they need to be developed, and then they end up leaving. They don't make it to their second contract on your team, and they go somewhere else and flourish or flop. And like I don't want that for my Rockets. I want to see Jalen be the best version of himself he can be, and Jabari and Amin and Shingun, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason. We don't have to have stars at all of those. All of those guys don't have to be stars, but we need maybe at least 2 of those guys to be like all-star caliber players, and then the rest to kind of like fill in the gaps. Or we're gonna be back in the lottery again, picking high and having our fingers crossed again and doing this all over again.
Well, we won't be picking too high outside of the top 4. So that's still gonna, unless Brooklyn just collapses this year. That's another thing to keep in mind because the Rockets don't have their pick outside of top 4 this next season. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Like you don't control your destiny when it comes to your draft pick unless you're just really, really bad. And if they're really, really bad, yeah, that top 4 pick's not really going to matter as much um, as it has in previous season because you're expecting, like you said, a lot more from the Rockets this year. One more thing I want to do before we kind of wrap up the show, kind of just preview a little bit about the Golden State game coming up because, like you said, Golden State has been a thorn in the Rockets' side for the last, I don't know, almost 10 years now.
Mhm.
They pretty much dominated the Rockets, even in the years the Rockets were winning, and they've done it in the last few seasons. We all remember the whole, Steph Curry going crazy a few times against the Rockets, closing out the Rockets in a couple of games. So, what are you expecting to see just coming up in the next game? Because, like you said, this isn't the same Golden State team we've seen in previous years. They don't have Draymond Green back yet. That's a huge deal for them. Klay Thompson has not looked good. He is, well, I say Klay Thompson hasn't looked good, but we all know what happens when he
He's a
plays the
Rockets killer.
Rockets,
Yeah.
especially in Houston. So he'll probably go out and put out 30 points tomorrow. Don't be surprised with that. And they have Chris Paul, who definitely looks his age at this point. He hasn't really done too much for them yet either. But again, he loves to stick it to Houston any chance he gets. So he might go out and have a game. So what are you expecting tomorrow? It's a Rockets season opener. It's a big game because, yeah, we're only 2 games in, but you don't want to fall 0-3 because the Rockets have a real tough schedule coming up. They have, if I'm not mistaken, they have to play Denver. They have to play Sacramento. They have to play New Orleans. They have to play the Lakers. They have a lot of tough games coming up, so you don't want to fall 0-3. So what are you expecting to see tomorrow?
So I know that they beat the Kings last night. I know Steph
Yeah,
Curry did the
Curry
little,
went crazy.
yeah, he had like 41 or whatever. And
Yeah,
then like you said, Clay hasn't looked like Clay, but I do know one thing. For some reason, whenever he plays the Rockets, he goes crazy and hits like 10 threes against us every single time. So I
yeah.
don't, it's kind of hard. I wish, like I said, if Tari Eason played last night, we win last night. And this is gonna sound even crazier because we lost by 30. But I think if Tari played in the Orlando game, that's a completely different game too. Just because it was a super close game and then the wheels kind of fell off. And like some of the things that we were lacking in that game, Tari Eason provides those things. So I just think it would have set a different tone. And so I think not having Tari in this game kind of scares me because I know he's gonna go out there and compete and like you see him in like tandem with a guy like Dylan Brooks who's tough as nails, and then you got like Fred VanVleet who's also pretty tough. He's shown us so far that he's a competitor, right? And so I'm worried. I don't want to start 0-3. I'm gonna be in attendance. I know a lot of us are actually going to that game. So I'm gonna call a Rockets win. I don't know how we're gonna get it. I don't know who they have to like flagrant foul, not hurt nobody. Like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I don't know, but like we have to win this game. The first two games, it's hard to win on the road, and that's why one of the reasons that it kind of hurt last night is like you almost got a road win, right? And a road win for this team, especially who hasn't experienced a whole lot of winning in the past few years. I think that would have been huge. And one thing we also have to keep in mind, like our win projections. If you're one of the people who said like maybe we win 36 games or 38 games, that still means you're gonna lose 40. If you win 38 games, you're gonna lose 44 games, something like
Yeah.
that. But so like there's gonna be a lot of losses, right? So we just have to also buckle up for that. But in order for us to like come out at home, I think they need to just come out and have some energy. Hopefully, I think Amon Thompson is gonna have a good game because our bench is so thin without the guy that we lost, for the legal issues, and with Tari being out, we're relying on guys like Reggie Bullock to come in.
Yeah.
Boban got minutes last night. Um, who else is like who's even coming off for Jeff Green? Who like I like Jeff Green a lot. I think maybe he needs more minutes to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. Him and
Um,
Cam. I think Cam.
let's
If
see
they
some
keep going
Cam
this
minutes.
way,
We
yeah.
need we like our bench is so our margin for error right now is unbelievably thin because our bench is decimated. We lost two guys who, or we're without two guys who we probably could have penciled in for 25 to 30 minutes per game, and now so it's the emphasis is even the burden is even more on the starters to come out and play well. So we'll probably need a big game, another big game from Shingun, another big game from Jalen. Jabari has to bounce back. And then I think Fred and Dylan are going to rise to the occasion. I just think that's who they are, and I think that's going to be the key to win. I mean, there's not a whole lot right now that you can expect to get from our bench unit. I hopefully with Amon being at home for the first time and being in front of our crowd, and maybe he can finally like flash some of that like ridiculous athleticism and decision making that we saw. We saw it in the preseason. Like it's there. I think he just has to get comfortable, and the game has to slow down a little bit for him. I think maybe tomorrow is the night that happens for him.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just so hard to determine right now who's going to win, lose games because just so many moving parts. But I mean, I will say that at the very least, you just want the Rockets to have a chance to win the game. You don't want to go out there and lose, be blown out by 20 or 30 points a game because then there's nothing positive you can get from a 20, 30 point loss. Yeah, you don't want to lose this game that you just lost to San Antonio, but at least we can pull some positives from there. That's something that they can kind of build on. So you just want to see them go out there and at least be competitive and not because I don't say it often, but yesterday game was a game the Rockets absolutely lost. It's not a game the Spurs won because the Spurs could, if the Rockets hit their free throws, there's nothing the Spurs could do about that. If Jabari hits that wide open three, there's nothing the Spurs can do about that. So the Rockets absolutely lost that game yesterday. It was totally in their control. So you just don't want to see those type of losses. If you lose a game where you're fighting hard, it's back and forth, and the other team is just better, okay. But last night the Rockets were actually the better team for a majority of the game last night. And then to lose that, that's what's the hard part about it. So it'll be really interesting to see how all that plays out tomorrow. Of course, they still not gonna have Tari Eason, so they still gonna have to find a way to fill those minutes. Maybe we'll see more Cam Whitmore instead of Reggie Bullock. We'll see how that plays out. But it's definitely going to be interesting. You don't want to go down 0-3 because you're going to have a tough week coming up here. So we would definitely be, keeping that in mind. We'll definitely be bringing more information, more videos from the games themselves, from practices, shoot around, whatever we're out at. We'll definitely be bringing you some information on that. And of course, Vader, I appreciate you jumping on every week with me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh man, it's fun every time. Every time we do one of these, I have a great time. Can't wait for the next one.
Absolutely. And hopefully the next time we're on next week, hopefully we'll have some wins to actually talk
Winning
about, because
streak.
it's a lot more fun to talk about some wins than keep talking about all these losses, because man, this stuff is draining to talk about every
Yeah,
week.
man.
So
I'm
we want
tired
to
of
talk about some
losing.
wins.
I had dude got mad at me because I hopped on a Twitter space and I'm like, man, I'm tired of this team losing.
Yes.
Like like I said, I was fine with it, the past few years because I knew what the end goal was.
Yeah.
We're in phase 2 now, like, so my expectations are different, and
Yeah.
I want to see us like actually win basketball games, and to have a win just like in the palm of your hand and just let it slip out your hand is very frustrating and disappointing. So yeah, hopefully we win tomorrow and can string another win or two together before we hop back on this.
Yeah, no more moral victories. I think we're done with moral
Yeah.
victories and talking about draft positions at this point. So
Yeah,
definitely
because
want
our
some
because our
wins.
pick, like, we don't even own our pick. So like,
No, we don't.
so we would have to rely on our pick like being a top 4 pick, and at that point, like,
Something
that's
else
just
has
gonna
went
be more
terribly
stress.
wrong.
More stress. No, let's make a push for the plan, and like, and then see what happens.
Yeah. So we'll see tomorrow. Maybe the Rockets can get back on track. And like I said, we will definitely be back here next week. And make sure that you hit that subscribe button and like button and leave us a comment and let us know how you're feeling about the Rockets season so far. And if you're still optimistic, if you're still at the point where it's just 2 games, you're not too worried, definitely let us know in the comments. Like I say, hit that subscribe button. That'll definitely help us going forward. And we appreciate all the support. And make sure you check out the next episode of Rockets Fuel Podcast.